Hey guys, welcome back. We are here again to talk about how we are going to focus on improving our mental health. And I do this by giving you tons of information around how mental health issues impact Black women specifically. So my name is Desiree Wilson. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and the owner of Anxious Black Girls. Anxious Black Girls is a therapy private practice located in Florida, and we specialize, okay? Let me just make that clear. So we specialize in holding space for high-performing, high-functioning Black women who really struggle with relationships, life transitions, just navigating their lives, right? They can be very successful in their professional lives, but for some reason, when you pull back the curtains, the relationships are in shambles, they're struggling with making decisions, their anxiety is this high, depression is creeping in, and they just need support so that they can be whole, they can feel happy, and we are the supports and guides in that process. So today's video is all going to be about cognitive distortion. So if you don't know anything about cognitive distortions, it is a concept that you become very, very aware about how you are thinking and how those thoughts are impacting the way that you are showing up in your life. Now, there are really about 10 common cognitive distortions that I'm going to go through very quickly here. And I see these a lot in my the population that I see at Anxious Black Girls. So the way that we think really can impact our mood. So a lot of times our thoughts move by so quickly that we are not even aware of what we're thinking half of the time, but what we are aware of is how we feel, right? So if you start to feel really anxious and you don't really know what's going on, I always tell my clients, you know what, stop for a second and just kind of think about what you are thinking about. Do you think about what you're thinking about on a daily basis, right? And are you aware of the self-talk and the narratives that's going on in your head on a daily basis and how that can be impacting the way that you are feeling and the way that you're moving in your spaces? So let's just jump right into it. And I have my handy dandy iPad here just because there's tons of information, and who has time to remember all of that, right? Like, I know what I'm talking about, but I want to make sure that I say it in the way that you guys can understand and I don't leave out the important parts, right? So thinking about what we're thinking about, all about cognitive distortions, okay? So textbook. Cognitive distortions are thought patterns that cause you to view the reality, okay, as inaccurate. It is usually negative, okay? They're very automatic thoughts and they're very habitual. So it is the way that you think, and you think because you think this way so normally and so automatically that it's normal and nothing's wrong with it, right? And then you start to believe the things that you are thinking. But these are actually habitual errors in thinking. It's actually unhealthy thinking patterns that we have developed, we have inherited from maybe just very anxious parents, very dysfunctional families, right? And they become our own. So once we've raised our awareness and recognized that, you know what, there may be another side to this and I can think about this differently, then we open the door for our healing to begin, okay? So what are some of the common distortions? So I'm going to start from the top. There's something called magnification and minimization. And when we do either or, there's no space for like the reality of life to exist, like those gray areas that most of life, right, consists of. So when we're magnifying something, we are exaggerating it. We're making it way bigger than what it actually is. And when we're minimizing, we're actually downgrading either the experience that we're having, the thought that we're having. We're making it not important, even though within ourselves we know that it's incredibly important. And one of the things that branches off of that, where I see a lot of times in my anxious clients, is this thing called catastrophizing. So when we catastrophize, right, we are only looking at the worst case scenario. Okay, so if you have this pattern or this history in your relationships where people are disrespectful, they respond to you in a very unhealthy way, you start to develop this pattern of thinking where you think that if I use my voice and speak up, if I retaliate in any way, disagree, or anything like that, that what's going to happen is the worst thing. They're going to leave me, they're going to reject me, they're going to yell, I'm going to get abused, whatever that negative thing is, that really extreme response that has been normalized in your life, unfortunately, becomes your go-to. That becomes your automatic thought. So when you catastrophize, you are always thinking that whatever you do will automatically lead to the worst case scenario, and that's just not reality. Unfortunately, because of the experiences that you have had, right, that has been like the pattern that you have developed. But you have to kind of think to yourself, has that always been the case, right? Has every single decision that you've made turned into something bad? No, not always, right? So there's that gray area, and there's a possibility that something else could happen. There could be another outcome. But because we are stuck in this unhealthy thinking pattern, we just assume that the worst is just around the corner, okay? Does that sound like you? I know. So overgeneralization is when we take, right, you make these broad interpretations from this one single event, right? So let's just say something happened and it turned out really bad, right? So you are now thinking that every time you, like, let me think, if you fail a test, all right? Oh my gosh, you know, I'm not good at tests. I'm not good at tests. I'm not good at doing these things. And you're taking this one bad thing, this one uncomfortable thing that happened, and you're generalizing it. You're saying that, you know what, I am just a terrible test taker. And that may not be true. What was going on during that day that you took the test? Were you nervous that day? Did you have a really good rest? Did you have a good breakfast, right? All of those things that happened. Did you actually study? Like, for real study? Right? So these are the kind of questions that I kind of process with my clients when I start to see that they're generalizing things and they're saying that this is always and this never happens. And I always tell them, we're not going to use those words, right? Because that's just not true. Nothing always happens and nothing never happens. That's just not the reality of it. So are you generalizing one event that happened and now making that the truth, right, of your life when it comes to other similar events? Okay, I want you to think about that. Magical thinking. My goodness, my warriors, where y'all at? Shout out to y'all. Right? My warriors, or my really incredibly anxious people who think that they have more influence over situations that they actually do, that's called magical thinking, right? So magical thinking is your belief that you can do something to actually influence the outcome of a very unrelated situation. So that's you people who think that if you do something, you can control the output of your partner. Right? These are the people who think that if I am doing all of these things, if I can do these things, then he'll love me even more. He'll love me even more, and then he just keep giving you more of the BS that he's been giving you. Right? That's magical thinking. That's you thinking that you have that you can actually influence the outcome of what's going on. So for some things that makes sense, but when we're speaking about people, right? When we're thinking about people, please knock that out of your reasoning, because people change because they want to. People change because there's an internal process within them. There's nothing that you can do to change them. This is with love. This is with love, sis. But we need to get you into reality to recognize that you are enough, that you don't have to do more, right? That if things work out the way that they work out, it is so. We will practice radical acceptance, and we will understand that we don't have to do more, right? In our relationships. Not always, sometimes, but not always. But if you are doing more because you think you can influence outcomes, I ask you to stop for a second and think about that. All right. Personalization, okay? These are for the people who believe, right, that one is responsible for events outside of your control, okay? So this is different than magical thinking, where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do all of these things, and you're purposefully trying to influence these things or these people. Now, right, or you're worrying about something, or you just think that if I do more of this, that it will influence. But no, but these are people who personalize and think, oh my goodness, I caused this problem. And it could be completely unrelated to them, right? Do you take everything personally and think that you are the reason things happen? I see this a lot in children, and then those children become adults who do this, right? Where children really believe that they are causing these things to happen, right? And it's not, right? You are not the reason why mommy and daddy are breaking up. That's not you, right? This is not why this is happening. Are you really believing that you are responsible for something? Do you think that you're responsible for this person abusing you? No, right? But if we are in a space where we're so impacted by our environment, we don't have people who have healthy thinking patterns, and we have people who don't take responsibility for themselves, then we get stuck in a pattern with them where they push things off on you, and you start to personalize and think that you are actually responsible for their misbehaviors. And you are not. You are not. Jumping to conclusions. So this is when you interpret the meaning of a situation with little to no evidence. Little to no evidence. Okay? And I got a client coming, y'all, so let me just try to hurry up and get this done. So, little to no evidence, okay? You take these two things and you think that you got the answer. You're going to put 1 and 7 together and you're going to make 5. Right? Totally unrelated, has nothing to do with what's actually going on, but you just feel that this is what's going on, even though you have no real actual evidence. You may be making decisions or jumping to conclusion based off of your experiences in the past that were similar, but let's look at the reality of what's going on here. Do you have evidence to support that this is actually the thing that's going on? Now, I see this happen in 2 ways. We have the mind readers, right? So the people who think, okay, that you are interpreting the thoughts and the beliefs of the other people around you. Like, you know what this person is thinking. Oh, they're going to hate me if I do this. Or they're going to think that I'm horrible. And it's like, hold on. What's the evidence? Like, why are you reading their mind? You have no idea what they're going to think or do. You literally don't, right? And then also the fortune tellers. So the people who can tell the future, right? The future. Like, I am going to, like, I know that this is going to turn out badly. If I do this, then this is what's going to happen. Again, is this historical things that have happened that you're making these conclusions on? Or is this actually... like, do you have evidence that this is what's going to happen? We don't know. We're not mind readers. We don't know what people are thinking. We don't know what's going to happen, right? We may have some experiences that have been similar, but we don't know. And are you looking at what's before you? Are you looking at your experiences with the person before you? And have they given you experiences, behavior patterns, things like that to solidify your beliefs? Because if they haven't, if you haven't done any of these things, then this is historical stuff that's kind of seeping into your future, okay? All right, we're almost done. I hope you're still with me. Emotional reasoning. My goodness, you assume your emotions are the truth. This is the way that it is going to be. This is how I make decisions in the world. But you know the problem with emotional reasoning? Our emotions ebb and flow. They ebb and flow. So imagine making decisions based on, I'm going to leave this job now because my boss pissed me off. I know that we all have been there, but can you take a second? Let's gather ourselves, right? Let's try to use the tools that we're learning in therapy or in whatever self-help book you're reading or whatever that is. Let's calm ourselves down. Let's ground ourselves. Let's center. And let's bring ourselves into our conscious and cognitive and intellectual mind. The logical space, right? Where our emotions are not present because our emotions feel as though what is happening is true, but it may not be. Are you thinking with your emotions that are ever changing? And if you are, imagine how unstable that is or could be. Disqualifying the positive, right? So thinking that like there's only like the negative thing, right? So sort of like when we catastrophize the worst case scenarios, or when we start to like overgeneralize and all of those things that I spoke about before, do you ever consider the other side? Do you ever consider that something good could happen, right? So if you're in this space, I think about my depressed clients. My depressed clients are constantly in this space where they are always disqualifying the positives. Right? Can something positive come from this? Is there another side? And although you may not have experienced that other side often, it doesn't mean that it's not available to you. Are you acknowledging that there's another side to this? That things could actually work in your favor? Should statements. My girls, my anxious white girls out here who be shoulding themselves to death. It should be this way. He should have told his mom. He should have told me about this. Shoulda. And the issues with should statements is that it does not take into consideration the entire picture. It does not take into consideration all parts of who this person is, all parts of who you are, your capabilities, if you failed at something, right? Is the should that you are now using to judge yourself, considering all of the things that has happened in order for this outcome to occur? And it does not. It often does not. So we don't want to put ourselves in a space where we are not giving ourselves grace and compassion by sticking on a should on there, okay? And finally, all or nothing thinking, okay? All or nothing thinking that things will always, never, or every single time, right? So I know that you guys use that with your partners, right? Sometimes I do too, and I gotta catch myself. Nothing is ever, every time I do this, you always, or I always, or you never, or I never. Those are just simply not true, because just with the experience of being human, we don't always do something. We don't never ever do something, right? Maybe we've done it once before, maybe rarely it'll happen, but those are absolute in the way that they are thinking, and actually, and really, like, nothing is really absolute. Like, very few things are absolute in this world. So I want you guys to like really raise your awareness, right? Because it can take a toll on your mental health. It can absolutely take a toll on your mental health if you are living in the space of these distortions, because none of it really creates space for you to grow, for you to make mistakes, for you to change, for you to have different perspectives. And a lot of these things we develop very even young, right? And it shapes the way that we engage with people. It shapes the way that we think about ourselves. It shapes the way that we show up in our relationships, how we are at work, because how you show up in one place is how you show up everywhere. You carry you with you, right? You're the common denominator. So you want to ensure that you are checking in, raising your level of awareness. Am I like in this space where I'm very, very like negative in the way that I'm thinking? Do I often like speak terribly about myself or about what's going on? And if I do, I wonder how that's impacting my emotions, right? Become curious about that kind of stuff. So let me very quickly, before my client pop up in here, right? This is how we're going to do some work to disrupt these things. So number one, let's get you in therapy, sis, because that's going to help you become more aware, right, of these negative thinking patterns. Then, and of course, go to anxiouswhitegirls.com if you're in the state of Florida. We're a virtual practice and we have availability. If you don't, then check out some other, if you're not in Florida, then check out some other sites like Psychology Today, Therapy for Black Girls, Clinicians of Color. Those are spaces that's committed to helping Black people. Like I said before, ask yourself questions like, do I have evidence to support this thought? How would I react if someone else was thinking about this in that way or thinking about themselves in this way? What would I tell them, right? Identify your patterns. Are you aware of these things happening? What are your patterns? What are the common distortions? And then try to challenge those things, right? And then, of course, if you wanted to get a copy of this worksheet with all of the information and more, what I was saying in this video, you can go ahead and click that button at the bottom or go to anxiousblackgirls.com/videos to go ahead and watch this and our library of videos that talk all about mental health and Black women exclusively. All right, so if this was helpful, go ahead and share this with a friend. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Bye.